Well, okay, there's a new Exorcist movie, and in my head I call it The Exorcism of Russell Crowe, which just makes me laugh because it's Russell Crowe.
Hi, and welcome to the Inner Moxie Podcast, a podcast about not one, but two neurodivergent adults trying to live their best life on the neuro D-list and not hate themselves in the process. I'm your host, Ronnie.
And I'm Zanny.
And this week, we will be talking about Bill Maher's idea of mental health.
Ugh. How's your Moxie meter?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm going to give it a 5-point scale. I know. I'm going to give it a 4. As you know, this weekend, probably not by the time people are hearing this, but as it's recorded, this weekend was Father's Day.
Oh, yeah.
Which was...
I did know.
Yeah.
I have one.
Yeah, and so I had my dad was out of town, so it was just me and my kids, and it was a good time. I felt thought of, and I felt appreciated, and all of those wonderful things you should feel on Father's Day. My daughter got me. I don't think I've talked about it on the show. I've talked about it with you though. I'm minivan life forever. Mm-hmm. I love my minivan. And I have made some cosmetic upgrades to it over the years. So like I have a dice shifter for it, and I have different stuff. But she got me little see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil skeletons that click onto the air vents, and it looks very cool, and cute. I love it. And yeah, you can put like essential oils in there to make it smell pretty. And then I found that they sell Dr. Pepper essential oils. And so now my car is going to smell like, unless I find that somewhere sells Surge, then all bets are off. And then my son, he got me and him matching shirts that says, "That's my duo." And then they have fingers pointing towards each other because we play duo in Fortnite. And then every time we play duo, I sing the song Duo from American Tail, the
terror movie.
Well,
it's terribly sad. I avoided it. That was another one of my brother's favorites.
I mean, it ends happy.
Somewhere out there.
This is what. Beneath the pale moonlight.
Too sad. Get out of here.
Well, I mean, you got to stick around to the ending when it gets happier again. That's
when I'm 4, I can't do that.
That's what I always tell people about horror movies. Like I told my daughter this when she was watching a scary movie. I'm like, here's the thing. If you watch a scary movie and you get to the end, and this isn't true of all movies, obviously, but you get to the end, then it's less scary because the bad guy has lost. If you leave in the middle of it, then the terror is always still there. Same thing with this sad movie.
I guess. But I don't believe you because I've seen House of a Thousand Corpses and it does not end happy.
See, I would go with The Mist, but...
that's not terror to me. That's like fun.
The Mist? No. Wait.
I mean, it's not... It's supposed to be... It's Stephen King. I mean...
The ending of The Mist is one of the saddest things ever put to film. I
don't remember.
But yes, anyway. Oddly enough, my son has also never seen American Tail. He just knows I sing the song from it every time. The duo, it's true. I know, because it's one of the happy parts. That's why you have to watch the whole movie.
I don't have to do anything. I will not revisit, probably.
Feifel Mouskowitz.
Too sad.
Philly. Anyway. So that stuff's got me riding pretty good. Some of the anxiety is finally starting to settle down. The aftershocks of the big event, as it were, the Burlesque Hall of Fame in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm a little backed up on this, but I've got a plan to get it caught up, and I think in the next week I'll be caught up. So everything's feeling like manageable right now, and I got that big bump from Father's Day, so I'm riding pretty high, with the exception of the research we did for this episode. But We'll get into that. How's your Moxie meter doing?
I think I'm a good 8.
Nice.
Yeah.
Out of 50.
Out of 50. Out of 5, actually. No,
Whoa.
out of 10, because I'm a 10-pointer.
Yeah.
And
So we're the same, basically. I was a 4 out of 5.
I guess. No, yeah, I guess it does track.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Never doubt my math.
Okay. Things are good. Not that life wasn't exciting before, but my anxiety blip has receded. I think the spring is just a hard season for me, which I never thought about it as far as like the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it is. So I have some self-imposed homework I'm going to do for that so I can kind of remember before it starts happening next year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like work is getting exciting again. Not that it wasn't exciting, but like my time is spent doing a lot of stuff because I have to, but now I can see the exit strategy to full on or at least 80% like development, which is what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's exciting.
Yay.
Because I get to learn a lot of new things and grow and go out of the office and stuff. So that's going to be fun. And life stuff is fun.
Life stuff is fun.
I don't know. I'm blanking a little bit.
That's okay.
But I mean, I have taken my temperature a few times today, and I'm between a 7 and an 8. I'm still fucking irritable. I can't get out of it. But the cats, before I got here, everyone just had to be on top of me and my stuff.
Oh, everybody loves me too much.
Literally my whole life. Like the last man I dated, I literally was like, why does this guy like me so much? Love. Like, why? I don't get it. I'm not even particularly nice anymore. I'm not mean. I'm just me.
Right.
Irritable. And I don't get it. Like, what a problem. People just like me too, but I don't get it. I don't know. Maybe it's funny. I don't know.
Is it nice to say my last boyfriend and mean it in both terms or both uses of the word last?
Yeah. I mean, goodbye and goodbye. Yeah, no, that's just the last in many a science experiment for myself, you know, trying to do what you're supposed to do and not understanding. And, you know, for me, the whole thing felt like torture. That one was only 10 months long. That's not a long time. It's longer than
depending.
a few months.
Yeah.
Torturous after the first 3 weeks. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the old Green Day, When I Come Around. You can't go forcing something if it's just not right.
Oh, I never actually listened to the lyrics. I've sang them. That's true. I'm learning that now. My 40s, I'm learning not to really force myself into stereotypes. But like, everything is coming to me bit by bit. And so now I'm just maybe overgeneralizing, but I'm like, I don't need to do anything that isn't me.
That's a good way to live life.
It is. I mean, as I have no dependents, I have the most freedom to do this also. Like, I can make work do this for me too. Like, not by forcing, but you know, like, I can do things my way and do my job. I can do things, I can self-accept. I think I said last time, the way that I emote and experience emotions is just fine. I've tried so hard to do it whatever the way other people say, and it just doesn't work for me. So why am I doing it?
Right.
Like, so many things have, you know, like, it feels like a jailbreak. I just feel like I've exited the the platform or something. I don't know. So that feels good.
Nice.
And also, the world doesn't revolve around me. I know. Okay. Anyway, people will probably say that. You know,
but I mean, like, your world revolves around you.
True.
You are you.
True.
You shouldn't feel. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, because you're not saying everybody else should do the things you're doing.
That is the exact thing I would never say now.
Yeah. A matter of fact, at least a small part of the joy is probably that everybody else isn't doing it. that it's an open highway, as it were.
Right. Well, like really fully understanding that no one thing can't work for everybody. That's impossible. Illogical. It doesn't work that way. So really applying that to as many areas of my life as I am aware of.
I think the one notable exception would be The Sandlot. Everybody loves The Sandlot for some reason.
I mean, I do love The Sandlot.
See?
I'm sure there are people that don't.
I was very scared that you were about to just shut me down.
No,
it was a gamble and it paid off.
Forever.
It's funny because I don't know really anybody who The Sandlot is their favorite movie, but I've never met someone who doesn't like The Sandlot.
I watched it many times as a child.
It's great.
It is. I loved playing softball and baseball too. I felt like I would just hang out with all of them probably. Never occurred to me that they were all boys. Didn't matter to me.
They were all boys.
I mean, it was the 50s.
I will say, and as much as I love the
Ooh, I hate fucking fireworks. My cats are probably freaking out. They don't even live near here. I'm yelling.
I have bad news about the coming weeks.
I will not actually be in town for the 4th of July. My cat sitter is prepared.
Nice.
Hello, Laura. Thank you. If you're listening, I'm surprised, but hi.
Where you
I'm going to my parents' house.
Oh, okay.
They are moving to North Carolina.
That's right.
Mid-July. So I'm going up to help finish packing, take some stuff home, go visit the old house one last time. They've lived there for 5 years. I don't have like a... Maybe it's been longer than that. But I go visit. I've lived in that town, Benicia, California, up north, since I was in kindergarten. So I do like the grand tour. We've lived in 5 places. I actually never lived in this house that they live in now.
Yeah.
But it feels like home. So, doing all that.
That's your folks' home. That's cool.
Yeah. So I will be up there with them.
Nice. I was going to say, my folks actually still live in the house that I was raised in. That we moved to when I was 4. And so they've been there for 36 years.
Wow. It's a very long time.
It is. One time they painted it and changed the locks, and they did not tell me. And I thought that was kind of passive aggressive.
Yeah.
I was like, "Hey guys," because I was like literally like, "Is this the right house?" Because you go up, it's a different color. I'm like, I mean, I grew up here. I lived here for 20 years or 16 years. This is obviously the house I grew up in. This is it. And then like, yeah, they just must have painted and didn't tell me. And then I tried the lock and it doesn't work. And I'm like, is this it? Am I breaking into someone's house?
That's probably a detail I would accidentally leave out to someone. Yeah. Probably. But I don't know your parents, if that's their style, or if they really were being passive aggressive.
No, they weren't being passive aggressive.
I mean, you never know. Some people's parents are, I've heard.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, do you have... at this point, I don't even know if there's any housekeeping.
Right.
Because we're backed up, as you have already said.
Yeah. You haven't gotten a chance to listen. I got a chance to listen to the episode as I was editing it. Yeah, nothing really struck me when I was going through it. I mean, I'll have the episode over to you soon. You can give a listen. Actually, let's pause here. Let you... No, I'm kidding.
I cannot go to bed that late today. No. So what we did is we watched an episode of Real Time with Bill Maher. My first time watching anything Bill Maher.
I have only watched clips before because, and I think this will come out, he angers me.
I've heard. This is the current season of right now. So season 22, episode 18. This aired the beginning of June 2024. If you're listening to this in 2044, hello. And this got on my radar because my aunt texted me and said that someone was going to be on talking about adolescent mental health and wanted to hear my opinion or thoughts on it. And that was all she said. And then I gave her my thoughts and then I didn't hear anything. So,
and then she disowned me as a niece.
No, I mean, anyway, we'll get there. But The guests on this episode, we're talking about a specific segment mostly. Before this segment, the first guest is John Fetterman, who I guess is a Democratic. Oh, I'm going to mess this up already. Senator? Definitely from Pennsylvania. Definitely a Democrat. Not sure if it's the Senate. He's the guy that wears hoodies to Congress. Do Congress people go to... I don't fucking know anything about the government.
I also do not remember. I did not take notes on that.
Well, he's famous enough for Bill Maher to know who he is. So he's probably one of the...
I've seen him pop up and stuff before.
Well, and he sticks out. Yeah. One thing that he said that I did like...
He is a big dude, too.
Yeah, he seems... Well, okay, I don't know how tall Bill Maher is, but he seems small to me.
This has been a point with you for a little bit now.
As a 6 foot tall person, and I've been this height since I was 14, people's height, specifically men, have always stuck out to me in one way or the other. Anyway, so, and I have no idea. He just seems small to me. Whatever. I'm not being figurative. This is literal. And then this guy...
He is 5'8" inches.
No, that's half hair. There's no... Anyway.
Half hair? What's that phrase mean?
His hair's poofy, right?
Oh. 5'8"? I think that's short for a guy, right?
They say the average height for a man is like 5'10" in the U.S., so
yeah.
A little short, I guess. But to me, he seems more like 5'5", but how would I fucking know? I'm never
the same height as Joe Rogan, apparently.
Oh, I knew he was small.
I do imagine Joe Rogan as being taller than Bill Maher.
You do? That's because he has strength of arm.
He's an inch. He's got an inch on Jon Stewart.
Hollywood is very small. This is one of the many reasons I don't go there. Okay. Anyway, and then the senator guy, he's very tall.
Yes.
Anyway, so he wears hoodies and stuff, and he was wearing it on the floor, wherever that is. That isn't this. Don't yell at me about politics. I know you won't, but I can't. My brain is not turned on by this. Well, sorry.
I'm not exactly filling in the blanks here, so I don't know how much room I would have to yell at you.
I know. I just don't know the technical terms. I don't know stuff about this. I'm not exceedingly political.
Mm-hmm. It's been a minute since you've had a civics class. You'd have to dust it all off. You know it exists. You know it's there.
Well, I feel like the whole world is feeding me bullshit, and I don't like being lied to. So therefore, I am not encouraged to engage and read up on stuff, whether that's well informed or not. But that is kind of one of the reasons my brain is just not absorbing all of that. Some people love it, obviously. People love politics. It's one of the things that'll really break up a party, apparently. I am not that way. It is what it is. I care about general stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he wore his typical dress on the floor, which hoodie. They looked like basketball shorts. Maybe they weren't. And tennis shoes. A few things he said, I was like, this guy might be on the spectrum, which isn't bad. I feel like, sensory issues, that's just one of many indicators, but the lack of eye contact that I don't think he was making with Bill Maher. There's a lot of things, and eye contact is not one thing either. It's a very debated one, actually. Yeah. But many things went into my oh, he might be, hey, cool. But anyway, he said people were so focused on that and not the bullshit that was being talked about and stuff, which is just, he said it was funny to him, which I do understand that.
Right.
I was like, that is great because people do care about that stuff. Who cares? Fuck the floor. If you're,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, it's a different level, but it is the kind of the thing we've talked about before of if polite, we believe in politeness and manners if they serve a point. But if they're just an arbitrary set of rules, then who really gives a fuck?
Right. And
I mean people, but not us apparently.
Right. It's the same thing of dressing up and going to church, or dressing up and going out to some musical or something. I don't know. People like to do those kinds of things, like a gala. Is that how you say it? Like people, you have to like black tie events. I don't understand. Like,
right?
Who cares? I don't. Anyway.
Or like when they make me put on pants to pick up my kids. I'm like, it's a fucking element. No, I'm kidding.
I was like, why can't you wear shorts? I wasn't thinking about nothing. My mind does not go to sexual stuff.
Well, it technically wasn't sexual. It was just nudity, but thanks for throwing me under that bus.
Listen,
no.
To me,
it's completely inappropriate to pick up children with no pants.
Right.
I understand.
Which was probably the point of that joke. I was just, maybe it was gaslighting. I'm not sure. But I was teased a lot about that when I was...
Teased a lot about...
being naive.
Oh, okay.
Or being like, I don't think I'm naive, but my brain just doesn't go sexual first. Like,
right.
That was just a thing that was used towards me. So, like, yeah, not that that's what you were doing, because you weren't doing that at all.
Well, if it felt that way,
it did not.
All right, good.
It's just like I wasn't even thinking about that. Anyway, okay, so yeah, so this senator guy was on there. Which was, I mean, I don't know. The senator definitely had some politician-esque answers in a more gruff way, in my opinion.
Right.
But that's not what we're here to talk about, unless you have anything you want to say about him.
Nope. I didn't.
Okay. So then the next segment is what we're talking about. So there's an author / she was or is an independent journalist, used to work for the Wall Street Journal. Her name is Abagail Shrier. She wrote a book recently called Bad Therapy, Why the Kids Aren't Growing Up. I did not finish that. There's probably another word after that. I would guess aren't growing up all right or something.
I think actually it might be that the kids aren't growing up.
Okay, so she wrote this book basically saying that all the kids are gentle parented and they're running amok and, you know, are having all these mental health crises, and this is a huge problem, blah, 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 blah. That is why she was invited.
Right. And I'll say, I do not like Bill Maher, but I am familiar with the work of what's her name again?
Abagail Shrier.
Abagail Shrier. I did not recognize the name at first. And then I did recognize the name. And I hope I'm not screwing up the order of your notes or anything by this. It's just,
mine just went in order of how they popped up.
But she wrote a book, Irreversible Damage. Yeah. Irreversible Damage is... Now, obviously, she wouldn't phrase it this way, but she is an asshole and a monster. Irreversible Damage is one of the leading books that demonizes transitioning, gender transformation, or gender transitioning. She is an avid voice of the anti-trans movement. This book that she wrote is
banned.
No, it's not.
It is.
Who banned it?
I don't know. They were talking about it.
Yeah, that's another note that I have. Here's all right. First thing first. She's a monster. The books she writes, at least the one she has, roundly disputed by most anybody who takes the subject seriously outside of the gender critical crowd. Gender critical crowd, by the way, is just a nice way of saying TERFs.
I don't know what that means.
TERFs are trans exclusionary radical feminists. So people whose feminism does not, people whose radical feminism does not include people who are trans folks. J.K. Rowling being a bit, as called her out by name. But the book she has, and I'm sorry, I don't have all of the the studies in front of me and stuff like that. But it's roundly bullshit. It was the first one, I believe, that came up with the idea of rapid onset gender dysphoria. Basically, she makes the point that from whatever mechanisms in society, because transitioning and trans people have become popular, that now you have this thing called rapid onset gender dysphoria, which hits really hard and then goes away. But we act so fast in transitioning kids that it doesn't get a chance to go away. All of that is bullshit. All of that is just made up, plucked straight out of the air.
Yeah, she's nothing but a journalist. So like her degree is in journalism. It's how to do all of the writing shit, not like anyway, her I'm not trying to cut you off, but this is an article that a GLAAD affiliated, not affiliated, but like they wrote this article in response to this book. The book, I didn't read it. I don't know if you did.
No, I haven't read it.
But it's about youth specifically. So they're not talking about all trans people. I think on the show she said trans exists and it's real or something, or maybe I don't know. Both
of them kind of have the thing of like, it's a real.
They're saying what they know that they need to say, maybe.
Yeah, well, and maybe they do hold it as, but it's it's akin to the same shit that they pull with autism. That same idea of like, well, I'm not saying there's no such thing as autistic people, but are all of these people really autistic? Oh, yeah. And the answer's fucking yes.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing with trans. They're saying, and that this is also a belief that, and this goes deep into the trans weeds, as it were. But they also support a belief that some people call true scum, which is that if you do not have medically recognized gender dysphoria, then you are not a trans person. Which that is not a mark that has ever been thrown out, and completely, for the most part, erases the experiences of non-binary people. And so even their conceit is problematic.
I don't agree with their stance at all. And I didn't read either book. Let me just read the quote from the doctor that read this. Okay, this is the Dr. Jack Turbin is the one who reviewed, and so he said, or they, I don't know. The quote is, the book's central and false premise is that there are massive numbers of transgender youth who are not truly transgender, but rather just confused, that they are all being rushed into gender-affirming medical interventions and surgeries that they will later regret. As a physician and a researcher who has dedicated my career to taking care of and understanding transgender youth, I recognize the book as bizarre and full of misinformation. I assumed it wouldn't gain much traction, but I was wrong. Shrier did not interview. Oh, this is something I wanted to bring up. Like, apparently she says she's talked to all these trans people, but really she talked to all of the estranged parents telling stories, which is not the same. Those are going to be completely different, which is a problem. And as a journalist, you should know that.
Yeah, and I'll throw it out there. I don't think that her problem is ignorance. I don't think it's that. I just think
she's not a stupid woman.
No, she just thoroughly doesn't give a shit.
She believes what she believes.
Yeah, she's willing to lie about it and use underhanded methods. She's not an idiot. She's a bad person.
I mean, this is not a study. Her book was not a study. This current one is not a study.
No,
it's an opinion. And I guess, I don't know. I guess she was famous, or I don't know, had some following or something, and was able to get the book deals.
Yeah.
I mean, it's controversial. Anyway.
And then just really quick, going back to the part where they did mention it being banned or whatever. I happen to have a little bit of knowledge about stuff being banned, as my other podcast, the Banned Media Podcast.
Shameless plug.
And yeah, I feel no shame.
Okay. That's just the phrase.
Yeah. No, I was agreeing with you. I feel no shame.
Yeah.
Completely. This book has not been banned. There's been no government, and this I did look up. There has been no government that banned this book. When they say banned, what they mean is there are groups out there that are in opposition to this book, trying to get it to not be released places. Not being released and being banned are two separate things. Like people always talk about Song of the South by Disney has been banned. It's not banned. Disney's just decided not to sell it. Tomorrow they can say we want to sell Song of the South, and they will sell Song of the South again.
Well, how does something get banned?
Something gets banned if it is illegal. So, for instance,
Felix the cat.
If you mean Fritz?
Fritz.
Well, and that's the thing. And I make this point on the Banned Media podcast a lot. I very rarely talk about things that have actually been banned. That's just kind of the name of the show. Mm-hmm. Fritz the cat was never actually banned. Institutions might ban them from their walls, but people can do that all the time. But like generally, if it's something illegal, it can be banned. The big one that comes to mind is child pornography.
And it should be banned.
Yeah, yes. 100%.
Good call. Law.
Yeah. But then there's actually still obscenity laws on the books, and there's a 3-prong measure to see if something's obscene. It's very rare that something falls under obscenity, and it doesn't stay under obscenity very long, usually. But you saw a lot of cases with that in the 70s around pornography. But yeah, so no government has banned this book. There have been people speaking out against it that don't want it sold in the institutions they frequent. To me, if that's how freedom of speech works, the cure to bad freedom of speech is more freedom of speech. She has come out and said shitty things, and people have said, I don't want to hear your dumb bullshit. That's not banning something. That's the repercussion for putting out shitty things.
Or controversial things or whatever.
Yeah.
This is shitty.
Yeah.
But like, other things that we wouldn't think are shitty are shitty to other people.
Well, like for instance, I was talking about Terrifier before.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Terrifier did not get played in Regal cinemas, did not get played at Edwards movie theater, did not get played.
Why?
Because it was a small independent movie, and it was like super gross and had violence beyond an R rating.
Oh, I started with Terrifier 2. That's why I was like, that one had some money or something.
Oh yeah, but like even then, I don't think Terrifier 2 got like a wide release.
I don't go to the movies.
Yeah, I also started with Terrifier 2, which I like. But like, I can't say those movies were banned because most theaters were like, we're not going to show that. That's not what we show here.
Well, yeah, it is. I saw Evil Dead Rise.
But Evil Dead Rise was rated R.
Mm-hmm.
What
is this other thing rated?
Probably unrated. That's what you go with if you can't. Because if you go past R, you get an NC-17, which tends to be absolute poison, though people have been more open to it recently, like for indie small chains, but you're never going to get major theaters. In general, you have a better chance of making some money with an unrated movie than you do an NC-17 rated movie. That's starting to change a little bit. In the 90s, we had one shot of making NC-17 a recognized, like a not taboo, and that was with Showgirls, and it did not work out. Though I like the movie Showgirls.
What comes to mind is you would.
I do.
I didn't say it as it came in. I was like, should I say this?
Say it.
Well, I did. It was just delayed. But I thought it on cue.
Yeah. But, I mean, just getting back to my original point, there, all of this is the effects of free speech, not stuff flying in the face of free speech. If if I put out a YouTube video that says something heinous and YouTube is like, we don't want that on our platform. That's not an encroachment on my freedom of speech. In fact, compelling them to put that on there, even though they don't want it on their platform, would be an encroachment on their freedom of speech. And I think that's kind of the case for this book. Nobody has attacked the freedom of speech of this book. They've attacked this book as a thing that they don't like, which is valid. And what people like her and Bill Maher are doing are leveraging actual fundamental ideals like freedom of speech to talk about what's been happening to her book, but that's not what's happening to her book. Just people don't like it. People don't want it. And that to me at least is not any sort of banning or violation of freedom of speech.
Okay. I watched I listened to a documentary about Onision, who was, or probably is still on YouTube, and they talked about freedom of speech, and they should have canceled him off of there. They just made him not be able to make money because of the shit he was doing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and that's the route they go sometimes.
But anyway, that's the only freedom of speech reference I have. Okay, so should we go to this interview about bad therapy, which is the point of why she was there, and then all these other things came up, and Bill Maher was eating it all up. There was a third person there whose name is Matt Welsh.
Yeah, and I believe he was from Reason Magazine, right?
Yes, and he has some podcast.
Okay. Do you know, are you familiar with Reason Magazine?
No.
It is kind of, it's kind of like the big libertarian magazine. And that has been around for years and years. I mean, decades upon decades now. A bit of an institution. And for my money, certainly one of the more one of the better institutions in the libertarian arena. Like I would much rather listen to Reason than most other things that come out of the libertarian arena. And this is coming from a guy who used to identify as a libertarian.
I couldn't even define it, but I will say I'm glad they put him in there because he brought some things up in a neutral way. Because it was very clear that the point of this was so that Bill Maher could say whatever he wants. It seems like that's what he wants to do, which, you know, when you have your own show, I suppose that is the thing. You want someone that supports your ideas, which is what I think he was using this for. I can't say that for sure. I've never seen another episode, and I probably won't.
Yeah, I mean, no, I would say that there are shows out there. Maybe I'm having trouble thinking of them off the top of the head.
Not likely. You know, most people who have, you know, apparently this guy's had a career for a long time. I don't remember anything, but he's had a long-standing career in whatever TV shows. I couldn't tell you. Is he a comedian?
Ostensibly. Did
he used to go and comedize real? I don't know.
I believe that he.
I mean,
he still does do stand-up comedy because he pitched that at the end of the episode that he was going to be out in places doing. So I think he still does do comedy, but I think he started out doing stand-up comedy and a little bit of acting for like B-movie stuff. And then I think around the early 90s, he got politically incorrect with Bill Maher.
That's what I remember.
The show. And I think like he's been in the host mode ever since.
Okay.
Again, I've seen clips of it.
Sure. I don't know. Like this person, the sense I got just based on like how he was speaking and the way that he was like taking turns and waiting for his turn to speak. It was just kind of like, I know that men are bad and we're toxic and we're all this, but blah, 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 blah. Like there's lots of things like that being said. It's kind of like, you know, I don't agree with what's going on in the world right now. I just wish it was like the old days, you know, like probably the 70s. I think he's probably he's a boomer,
Yes,
right?
he's absolutely a boomer.
So there's that whole thing. So like he was a Democrat back in those days, and now things have turned progressive, and he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
So he wishes it's like it was in the 80s or whatever. I don't know. Like it's very that vibe, very grandpa in that way. Like and I just don't like that. Like we can always grow. I don't know what's going on with these, the people, actually the demographic they were talking about in the workforce, but it's not my job to just talk about how confused I am about like how can I make it work? How can I get them to stick around for a year at this job? Like that's what I need to do. It's kind of like this is the hand we're dealt with the generation. So we can complain all we want, but that's not going to do anything.
Yeah, well, I think that this is like what boggles my mind, especially as we keep getting older, is I think so much of this is just the fucking generational divide again. But like, how does like every generation not remember their parents thinking that their generation was stupid and lazy and the worst of all time? And yet somehow society keeps moving and getting better. But
according to these people, probably.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like, I don't know, like they think like all of a sudden magically it can't be that they don't understand this new generation. It can't be that they've become dinosaurs. It has to be that the new generation doesn't fucking get it. And I think like I've said it before, I'll say it again. I stand firmly with Gen Z and whatever generations coming after it. I think they have a huge amount to deal with. And I think that I have seen this generation more than any other generation. Like Bill Maher and people of his ilk are constantly saying, oh, they're so weak. They're so blah, blah, blah. We need to teach them to be strong. And what I see time and time again from this younger generation isn't them saying, you can't say that shit about me. It's them saying, you can't say that shit about them. I have never seen a generation stick up for the rest of their generation like this generation has. They're like Gen Z has, and I'm sure like the coming Gen Alpha is going to do in some, because like you can even go back to shit like the anti-Vietnam War sentiments, probably more his speed. But even then, like you're really talking about what you're aiming for is the freedom for white kids to do drugs and not have to go get killed, which by the way, I am completely pro. I'm pro all kids. I'm pro all kids getting to do drugs. This is a bit much. I'm pro all legal adults who now in my mind are kids getting to do drugs, and none of them having to go to a war that they forced to go into a war that they don't want. But like, that's like also one of the things that bothers me so much about Bill Maher's, he like mentioned like 8 times about legalizing weed. We live in, and I understand on a federal level and stuff like that, but also he always has this kind of demeanor that, oh, well, I live this dangerous lifestyle. I believe he sold like a little bit of weed in college and shit like that. And it's like, but he's, it's like, oh, I did these things that were really dangerous. I could have gone to jail for a very long time for this. And it's like, but you weren't going to, even if you got busted. Other people would. And you are using the real threat that other people face doing this to make yourself seem cool. And that's like one of the big problems I have with Bill Maher.
He downplayed white privilege?
Yeah.
I was going to say the demographic that they're talking about, the kids they're talking about are college kids. That's where the stats come from for this. So I'm like, already that's less than half of the actual adolescents in the age group they're talking about. This seems very primarily white, but definitely like at minimum shrinking middle class and up. Like, because there are many families that are not doing gentle parenting, but they are not on these people's radar, I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
So I as soon as they started going, I was like, okay, like these are not like the entire generation in the entire United States. This is a very like spotlighted few, not even few. I mean, it's probably a good amount of people, but there's just so many more people of the same age group that maybe aren't like this.
Yeah. Well, and I think that they're considering anything gentler than the way they were brought up as being gentle parenting. Because also, I don't know that I have come across anybody, and I know some crunchy granola motherfuckers. I don't know that I've come across anybody that literally describes what they do as gentle parenting.
Well, describing and doing, I think, are different things. Like in my head, I'm a tiny, tidy British lady for no reason. I don't want to be that, but that's also not true. But I have this like vision of myself as just being tidy, and I just don't have so much stuff. Like, you know, so like if I were to look around my house and somehow not see some, you know, like I could give a narrative, I'm just so tidy and I just don't hang on to a lot of things, but that's not true. I don't hang on to a lot of things. My house is generally organized-ish and it's not cluttery, but like I'm not, anyway, you know what I'm saying? Like our visions of ourselves are not always actually reality. Yeah. Which is the point I'm trying to make.
Well, and I guess that's also the problem I'm having of like, or not problem I'm having. I think the problem here is he just like they're talking about it like there's this epidemic of people doing gentle parenting, and it's like, but you haven't even really defined what gentle parenting is. The way you talk. Oh,
they kind of did.
Oh, do tell.
So, basically, I don't know where this came from, but the first question that Bill Maher asks is, why do all political families have a ne'er-do-well fuck up in the family? Yeah. And then Abagail, whatever, says, well, children basically need three things. And we've known about this forever. These things are essential. And it's parental authority / hearing no, independence, and loving community. And I was like, these aren't like the worst things I've ever heard. Definitely hearing no. I will say some of her stuff I have a neutral stance on because she's not 100% wrong just because I don't like her. Yeah. You know, like I do think kids need to hear no. Yeah. And not always lovingly. I do agree with that.
I also have, like, we see it all the time. I would be hugely shocked to find a parent that never says no to their kid. Even that says, that doesn't, you know, that does, it doesn't exist. And it does. I mean, I'm sure it does.
Okay. The caveat is when I'm working with, I say this as if I'm doing this now. I am not. I used to work a lot in homes with families with, you know, my client was, you know, their child for one reason or another, because they have autism or something related. Yeah. Not one reason or another, but like sometimes it's easier to say fine to that kid and not deal with the behavior. So in that sense, then that is it. Okay. That's what I mean when I say that. So like their lives, everyone's life was miserable. I mean, the kids generally weren't always just completely happy unless they were, you know, high support needs, you know, really not attending to like what is going on around them and just able to be in their own world 100% of the time. Other than that, which happens once in a blue moon, no one's happy in that scenario, really. Right. But like hearing no is super infrequent. You know, I have heard people my age who have kids, you know, like, oh no, we're not, you know, like there's a voice or whatever, which fine. You know, at the end of the day, if the kid can say like, okay, it's time to stop doing this, you need to do this. Like, and I think that does happen more. Like hearing the word no is not necessarily essential to get a no, if that makes sense too. Yeah. And I think there's a hyper focus on the word no. Anyway, I got a little off track.
No. And I think there's a lot of I guess the point I would go with is I think they're like, even the people I have known that try to let their kids have everything they want, try not to say the word no, try not to make no a reality of their lives, they fail at that pretty hard. So even when there are people that want to, I think it would be a very, very rare exception where kids are growing up without hearing no.
I do think that getting it more than on the occasion. So in the example, it's really easy to see. You know, they were talking about Joe Biden's kid getting caught with crack or something. Right. I don't know the whole story. But and Bill Maher was criticizing Joe Biden's parenting. Again, who knows? The guy's old. Yeah. That kid is probably older than us. So yeah. Hold on. I don't even care about this. But you know, so all of these things, so parental authority, independence, and loving community, like she said that these kids get none of that, like in famous families or whatever, which is probably true.
I mean, it's something that makes sense, but like I always feel weird pulling out something like that to support your bigger point when you're just like, it's a narrative that you're filling out. It may be a true narrative. We don't know if it is or
I mean, there's
not.
no absolute for anything. Yeah. And I'm, you know, independence, like in what way? Because in the United States, we're a very independent nation. We really focus on, you know, as soon as, you know, babies are born, sometimes it's like, okay, they need to learn how to self-soothe, you know, it starts that young. Whereas, you know, there are other collectivistic cultures that, you know, generally, whether individualistic or collectivistic, the kids turn out all right.
Right.
You know, it's not, that isn't necessarily the thing, unless they're talking about give them opportunities to learn, if that's what they're talking about. And then loving community, I mean, to me, those are subjective things.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, anytime someone has said, we've known about this since the beginning of time, generally that's shorthand for, I didn't feel like doing actual research into this. These are the three necessities that I feel like that sound right to me.
Yeah. I mean, hearing no and like parental authority, I think is super important. And it is very clear after a short time, at least to me, how much power kids have. And some kids have way too much. I do think that is happening. I can't say what was happening before because I didn't do the research. And I was a kid. You know, I can imagine that now kids have more ideas about what they should be doing, and they might be getting less pushback from parents now. I think that could be a thing, but I don't know that. Yeah. I'm not on TikTok, so I don't know anything.
Well, I am a scholar of the University of TikTok.
Well, so. Great for you.
Well, boo fucking who.
Right. Well, basically, and then she says, American kids today also don't have those things. So I'm like, okay, that's a gross overgeneralization.
Yeah, I don't know how you get, but other than that, it's just the same typical thing, and we've seen it over and over and over again of one generation hating the next for whatever reason that may be. But you know, it's. And this may be just because of my area of interest, but you can go down a list of controversial forms of media, and as you go through it, one of the things that always rings out the same is that it's something that kids love that their parents don't understand. You know, rock and roll, video games, pinball machines, rap music, comic books.
Today's fashion.
I don't get it. Any today's fashion. But that, for some reason, there always seems to be this generational thing of as folks get old and don't understand young folks, it's the worst that ever was and all this. And that to me is just what we're hearing here, of a bunch of old people wanting to be old, but willing to spread harmful, dangerous rhetoric to do it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's easy to critique other people's parenting, you know, as a person that's worked with lots of sets of parents and caregiving situations.
I was going to say, I know Bill Maher doesn't have kids. I was curious if the other two did.
I know they both do. Okay. Matt Welsh talked about his two, and he made the most he made fun of how, like this other thing that we'll get to, but then the other one, she didn't talk about her kids, but I read in this other article that she has 3 kids. Mm-hmm. And I guess, I don't know. She made it seem like people were after her for saying all this stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
It may or may not be true. I do know that on the internet, people are very bold and make, there's this new series it's on HBO Max for me. I don't know where it really lands. It could be ID. It could be anywhere in the Discovery Plus universe. But it's like social media murders, which all of these people, this is all within the last 10 years, but like heavily stalked or whatever, involved in some, it had the major focal point was social media. It's not just like, oh, they were on Instagram and now they're dead. Like, it's not like that. It's like, no, you could trace this stuff back. Or like the one that happened recently. The person that perpetrated put actual photos and video of himself perpetrating something like bad.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, and too, and I think that brings up, and Matt Walsh did bring it up, without demonizing it entirely. Social media is definitely playing a part in this and needs to be examined. And we don't understand it all yet, and it's easy to say it's all bad. It could be all bad. It doesn't matter. It's fucking Pandora's box. It's not going back in. We need to know how we can deal with it effectively. But I do think that is a point worth mentioning. For sure. As Matt Walsh is his name. Isn't that the name of the dude that is oh yeah. I think that's the name of the guy from America's Most Wanted.
Oh yeah, I think you are right. Adam Walsh was the kid.
Yeah. That was a sad
Walsh,
story.
not Welsh. This is a Welsh.
Oh, okay.
Like the juice.
I thought isn't Welsh
the people?
Yeah.
That too. I feel like that would be spelled different, but what do I know?
Yeah.
I'm not global. I'm not. Okay, that's not true. I am not geographic in any way. Spelling thing. Well, anyway. Who knows what's going on in my head? Okay, so what's her face brings this up. Kids today under a microscope. Social media. She said, well, because of social media and all the stuff, she kind of brushed that off. And their parents are so afraid of traumatizing them because mental health professionals are tell these parents that saying no or punishing them could be traumatizing. Then there's no authority exerted, and this generation is being raised as shrinks, which is that a thing? And they're miserable. And then later she says something like, I highlighted it. They're behaving like mental patients. Yeah. Which, okay, like, so first of all, we'll get into it, but like she basically focuses in, it's not actually mental health. She kind of like interchanges the term therapist, mental health professional, teachers, and paraprofessionals.
It's almost like she has no fucking experience in the medical field whatsoever.
Because what she's talking about is most schools. I know that the schools that, at work that we work with, like they are doing this program where it's bringing emotional regulation into the conversation and the curriculum. That's what that is. And she is saying this is terrible. It's making kids talk about all this terrible stuff. And like, it's like a therapy group now. And, they're rehashing all their trauma right before, taking their math classes and stuff. And that's not the point of this. Like, I can say with authority, because I've done this hundreds, if not thousands of times, each person in the world is different. Okay. Each teacher is different in the way that they think. Everyone has the same job description as a case carrier, but it looks extremely different for everybody. So some people might take it a bit too far. Like, maybe we shouldn't be talking about anxiety right before a math test. Like, that really doesn't make sense. So maybe we don't do that.
Right.
But maybe if something happens, like, give space to talk about things that make you sad and happy. Yeah. And like she's saying, like, we're just talking about all the negative emotions and it's all slanting negative, but it's like, I don't remember anyone telling me how to emotionally regulate anything.
Yeah.
And the negative I think almost everyone, maybe actually with ADHD, I was told to calm down a lot. So maybe that is, but that's not giving me a strategy.
That's not telling you how to.
That's just telling me I'm too much and I got a mask. Calm down is not. Yeah. That's not teaching you anything. Right. Because like what I was about to say is I remember we all know how to regulate happiness, but then I was like, oh no, we don't. No, we don't. But but the tough stuff is what comes out more anyway.
Also, I have a firm belief. I'm a mama's boy. Mm-hmm. I love my mother deeply. If you told my mother, and let's say, as a young child with ADHD, I'm going to school, let's start kindergarten, we'll say 89, right? Sounds about right. If you told my mother 89, right. 90, we need to work on Ronnie's emotional regulation, she would say, what the fuck does that mean? Not those words, but that would be the sentiment. We're also just a lot more informed than we used to be.
True. Like no one cared to what they said, like our parents weren't hyper focused on our happiness.
And even then, I think they were, but we didn't, maybe not hyper focused on our happiness, but I think that we don't have the same tools, that the way of going about, I think we're all looking for the same results. I do think my parents were aiming for that children that would grow up to be happy and able to take care of themselves. The toolkit we have to do that, the knowledge base of what works and what doesn't, has grown immensely in the 30 years between when my parents took up the mantle of growing human beings and when I took up the mantle of doing it. That's good. That's how society should be. I've always said, and again, I think my parents did a great job. If you don't think you're doing a better job than your parents, then you really should step up your game. That's how the human race moves forward, Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, for sure. So then at this time, I guess the Matt guy mentioned D-Day, which I did not hear.
I am so fucking tired of people bringing up D-Day. First of all, like the people that went to D-Day came back and were like, okay, well, we're good now.
Sort of. I mean, They also were shell shocked, which is now what we call PTSD. Yeah. Not everybody. No. But this was Bill Maher's point. His point was like, well, okay, my dad was in D-Day. Okay. And I'm like, okay, my grandpa was too. He was, one of 6 Navy ships that went to Japan and the only one that returned. Like, there's some guilt with that. Whatever. He's dead. It's been a long time. He was born in 21. I mean, that was a long time ago. But he is just kind of like, you don't have PTSD unless you've been to war.
He was born 3 years ago?
Yeah. That was this is one of the things that actually really frustrated me. Because up until that point, I really didn't have a frame of reference for this Abagail person, this Matt person, and even Bill Maher. I was like, I could probably already know that I dislike this approach to everything he said so far. Not a fan of Bill Maher. That's all right. I don't hate him. I don't know him.
Yeah.
But I can't. This is probably like the magnified, glorified version of who he really is. Like at this point, if you've had a 30-year career, why wouldn't you be yourself, at least in some way?
Yeah.
So
also, I think it's if somebody who does terrible things in the view of the public in their private life, they're totally chill. It's still okay to hate the fact that they do terrible things in the light of the public, Yeah.
I
would argue that that's probably a more important place, especially if they're a well-known person.
Yeah. I mean, if you're getting your news from stuff like this is a problem.
Right.
And all these people sound very well educated, which they are. I don't know about Bill Maher. Sounds like he went to college, he said. I mean, college is not the meter for smarts, okay? No. But
also, I don't mean to be me. He graduated in fucking 67 or something. I don't know. But I guess I think that Bill Maher thinks of himself as an intellectual. I think what Bill Maher is a guy who's gotten lucky and has nice suits. And he's mixed those two things up.
Well, I mean, an intellectual is also a subjective thing. But like if you have the type of platform and you're hobnobbing with people, I don't know what that phrase actually is.
You can't show hobnobbing on TV. Even no, I'm kidding. Yeah.
Well, I'm is this a bad thing to say? I don't even know.
No, it's yeah.
If you're bumping elbows and talking to people who have studied a lot of things, and then you feel like you know that. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I can't not touch this thing today. I have hit this with my nose so many times.
The nose won't. I haven't heard. It's the springs that.
Okay. You could start to feel that way. I could see it happening, like without actually looking at stuff. And like the kind of research that I do is different than the kind of research that you do. Both are great. It's just our learning type, whatever you want to say. I don't know. Like, what is an intellectual? I don't fucking know. Like, I know a lot about a very narrow few things. I know a general amount about other stuff. Would I consider myself an intellectual? I would not, but I don't even know what that means. So,
right.
I mean, who cares? That was the thing that was more important at another time. But okay, yes, I do believe that he comes off entitled, probably narcissistic. I think if you're in the public eye like that, like how could you not be?
I would.
It's not 100%, but I feel like a majority would need to be.
I would say outside of because it's just not my thing to guess at what he's a condescending prick. For whatever reason it may be. That's kind of been he's a condescending prick and he's a cynic. And I honestly have a much bigger problem with the cynicism than the condescending prickness. I've liked some condescending pricks in my life. But yeah, I feel like he mixes up his cynicism with intelligence. He thinks because he downplays everything and that he has a smug demeanor that's intelligence. When knowing some of the other stuff, like his he'll always he's outspoken about his atheism. Gives the rest of us a bad fucking name. But he's always like, oh, I'm so pro science. I'm so pro science. And it's like, I mean, broken clocks right twice a day. He's the atheism thing, but like, let's not pretend that's from science. He is very judgmental about, Western, not drugs. Medicine. Still hasn't taken the fucking COVID vaccine. And it's like, I don't know. It's I don't like him. He makes me very angry. I don't know if I told you. I started watching it last night and I had to stop halfway through. And
That's
then
how
just
I felt about Succession.
Take it up in the morning. I was like, I can't. Yeah, except for he's real. Oh,
who's real?
Bill Maher.
Oh yeah, true. I mean, for me, it was the vibe. Like, I just can't tell everyone to fuck off all the time. This isn't healthy with my current situation.
Yeah.
So I gotta stop. I did finish. Okay. Yeah. He is annoying.
Yeah, and one more thing I just want to bring up real quick before we keep moving on. He said, and this isn't a direct quote, I had to grab it in my notes. Oh yes, just because we were talking about gentle parenting, he said something along the lines of, we had with Me Too, we had
a reckoning.
A reckoning. There we go. That's the word. We had a reckoning with gender, and with George Floyd, we had a reckoning with race. If you put gentle parenting with the fucking Me Too movement and George Floyd, that's fucking egregious.
He said there's a parenting reckoning coming.
Yeah, that's just I think it just goes to show the amount that he's just using those things to to prop up his argument. I'm like, no, these are actual fucking huge deals. I'm sorry you don't like gentle parenting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you think there's an issue here. Let's not pretend this is in the same breath. This is like
you can't get arrested for gentle parenting. Let's say that.
Yeah, well, and even then, it's like it's so dismissive of what we saw in the wake of the Me Too movement, what we saw in the wake of the tragic, unfair death of George Floyd.
Seems like a good time to bring up this quote that he said that I want to punch him for.
Let's go.
This is at the end.
I'll punch him.
This is when he was talking about the woman basketball player that no one's supporting. I mean, she's so good. Apparently, she's really good. Whatever. I don't know.
Really quick, because you have the more detailed notes. Literally, my notes on that was, what the actual fuck with the female basketball player? All of this shit he said was insane to me.
He said it somehow this turned into defending white men. Okay, he said it's not always racism when a white person succeeds, which is what he's talking about. This woman is a heterosexual white woman basketball star.
Right.
But they referred to her as a girl anyway, girls basketball, but this is college, they're women. Okay, get the fucking saying girls when you're referring to a group of over 18 people is just not right to me. I when you would say men for anything else.
I try and catch myself when I do that. I would love to say that I never do that, but I agree with you. It is icky, and I'm guilty of being icky sometimes. But I'm better about catching myself.
In the same vein, I would also say it is not great to call groups of over 18-year-old males boys. I think that's equally wrong. Anyway. But what he said after that, so I'm like, oh my God, you're going to turn this into like, I mean, the veracity of the actual words is true. It's all of the other stuff that he puts into it with his swagger and his whatever you just said, cynicism and prickness.
Condescending prickness.
It was condescension with the kind of like, I'm white and I'm fine. And what he probably wants to say is white men are fine. We're actually not, like white privilege isn't really that huge. I feel like he would say that. He just knows he can't. Like that's a step too far for him, I believe. Anyway, so the rest of it, he goes, women are catty. The league is very lesbian and she's not. There's racing. There's a lot going on. I'm like, fuck you, bro. Like, get the fuck out of here. I don't like this. This is so dismissive. If you have issues with women, fine. Go to a fucking therapist. You never will, because this whole episode was about how too much therapy is happening. Right. It's turning everyone into, I don't know, wet noodles.
Yeah. The fucking... Also that he precedes it by like, I don't watch women's sports, but here's my opinion about it as a man. Is fucking like ridiculous.
This whole thing did not need to be on this show. They didn't need to talk about this. Well, what did you add? Nothing. Also, crickets.
Like I just don't know. And it was like his audience was even like, for that. And I was like, what? Yeah, what the actual fuck? Like the whole time of like him saying all that shit, I was like, what is going on? Why are we? Also, like the whole thing about like, well, if I'm going to watch basketball, I'm going to watch the creme.
I'm going to watch the pros.
I was like, but
the Sparks are pros. I learned about them.
They're WNBA, right?
Yeah, WNBA is professional, but this is college too.
Oh, okay.
I believe. I don't really know anything about this, but when they showed the clip, it said the name, the states, or like, so I was like, that's not what they do in professional. They put the name of the team versus like the state or the institution.
Right.
So,
but either way, I mean, they're clearly very talented little girls.
Little girls that are probably taller than you.
Yeah. Very talented women. I was just calling back to calling them girls. Very talented women. And then he admits to complete ignorance beforehand. Like, I feel like that would be...
Well, he went on this whole thing like, oh, her teammates, like when someone shoved her down, her teammate came over and like laughed at her. And that's where all of this is coming from. Like they showed some clip about this and then, you know, oh, guys don't do that. Guys have their teammates back. Da 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 da. And, you know, this is terrible. Well, women are catty. That's just women. You know, like, first of all, I will say that has been a huge thing. It probably is a thing, but I think it's less of a thing now because I think that social media is helping with that, you know, like let's support each other. Like that's a whole narrative because like, I do think that was a society thing. Like men pitting women against each other so that they won't unite and do what we're doing now, which is be equal.
Yeah.
And bring great things to the table. So anyway, but of course he's going to say women are catty. Like, and a lot of women might say, yeah, women are catty. I don't know how old those people are. I think that that used to be a thing, but now it's kind of like we are needing to kind of like refute all of that, you know, and people who watch this are going to be like, oh yeah, women are catty. Like this is just as much of a problem as like right-wing shit. You know, it is propagating the same kind of stuff. Like anti-women is one of the few threads through, I want to say every culture, you know, like pretty reliably men are on top everywhere.
Yeah. I would venture to say there's probably going to be exceptions that prove that rule. But certainly major, well-known societies. But also too, like, here's the fucking thing of like, okay, you have this one example of which, by the way, I don't know how sports works. I don't know how quickly you're supposed to be there to pull somebody up. But you found this possible one example. Then you admitted not knowing anything about it. You pulled in a quote from a man about it. And this was one example of one player on one team in one sport. And and essentially your answer is, bitches be catty. It's insane. Yeah.
Which we haven't even talked much about the whole mental health piece of this, which is the whole vibe. So like we kind of got sidetracked with the PTSD thing, but like the thing that I didn't like about this is, okay, yes, some vets do have PTSD for sure. Other people do for other reasons too. There is a culture in general. This is not specific to PTSD, but this is attributed to like whatever's happening on social media where it's like, it's not even just about social media. People have always said, oh, I'm so OCD. This is more of like an ableism thing, but now it's like the spotlight, you know? So it is something to say, I have PTSD. I'm in therapy for it. Da, 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 da. You could say, oh my gosh, I have PTSD from that, whatever that was, you know, which maybe we shouldn't say stuff like that. I'm, trying not to say things like, wow, that's crazy. It's really hard to take out of language.
Right.
Because it's so, like they said it a bunch in this whole segment.
I think the one that gets thrown around a lot is OCD. I'm really OCD about that. And it's like, I don't think though. Yeah.
Because if you did, you'd never leave the house.
You would have cried right now telling me about it.
Yeah. But they were making a point of that, like, and then what's her face says, oh, that's right, they don't have PTSD. Kids raised gently in Brentwood don't have PTSD. And I was like, okay, like some, yes. Others, like, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. There are a lot of like abuse situations where a person could get PTSD. And PTSD is not just, I mean, it looks, I think a lot of people have it and are never treated. And it's not always from like, I'm watching this person's arms get blown off, which could definitely do it. But like long-term exposure to low-grade stress, like, maybe a family member rages like 3 times a year, but the rest of the time is like the buildup and the eggshells, and that could also do it. It's like the living in fear. That there's a whole cycle with that. Like there's a lot that could go into that, and unfortunately, I think a lot of homes have stuff like that. And it doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter if you're in Brentwood or if you're in El Monte. Like it doesn't matter.
And this is something I'll say. I don't know. Are you a big fan of Kevin Smith at all?
I don't know who that is.
Kevin Smith is a director, Clerks, Mallrats,
okay.
Jay and Silent Bob. He's Silent Bob. Anyway, Kevin Smith, a couple of years ago, had a heart attack, or something along those lines. And, he was always, are you familiar with like Silent Bob? Does that,
I could see his face.
Yeah, he was a fat guy, and then he lost a bunch of weight. And then a couple of years later, so this a couple of years ago, and forgive me, I don't know all the details off the top of my head.
I can't forgive this.
He had a bit of a mental breakdown, and he had to go into a mental health retreat of sorts to deal with it. And I saw him give an interview afterwards, and he said one of the hard things that he had a hard time with was he was in there and he was getting treated for trauma. I don't know if it was PTSD specifically, but it was trauma. And he's like, but like there's other guys in here that have like real legit, that saw war, and they're coming back with these, that's real legit PTSD. And he said the therapist there told him like, your brain doesn't know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's giving you the exact same thing, even with your rich Hollywood elite problems.
Which I don't think that's an easy life either, by the way.
Yeah.
Like people put that on a pedestal, like, oh, if I had all this money and notoriety and stuff, like all my problems would be solved. Like, no, like people would stop telling you no, actually, and like try to give you lots of drugs and things potentially. Like there's a lot of, you maybe would never have privacy again. Like all of these things are not things that are considered when fantasizing about being famous.
I know he's not he may be a problematic source to quote at this point, but it is one of my favorite lines from a Kanye West song. He says, having money is not everything, not having it is. And I do believe that, of like there is like money is not going to solve all your problems. It'll help a lot though,
to a certain threshold, of course.
And I think there's actually been, I was reading like a study where they found like the exact number, and I think I'd have to look it up, but I think it was somewhere around like $200,000 that your return investment, you don't really get much happier after that.
I would say that's probably true.
Yeah. I would like to experiment with it though. So if you guys want to hop over to the Patreon.
Seriously, please do. But yeah, like one person's trauma is another person's bad day. And your brain really doesn't know the difference. People do overuse this phrase.
Oh, for sure.
Like, you can joke around about being traumatized, but then, sometimes you don't know, or at least for me, it sneaks up on me. Like I was at the dentist once and that was enough. I'm just kidding. No.
Those people are monsters.
I was like the first or second patient of the day, and I had just come in and they'd put the thing that
bib.
No, like the heavy thing for the x-rays.
Okay, yeah.
They're getting me set up for that, and we heard what it sounded to me like a metal cabinet like fell over, which was weird. And then I heard a weird scream, but then it turned out that a car had like crashed into the front of the building, into the lobby. And I didn't think about that too much after the first day. I was just like, wow, that was weird, but I didn't realize that. I mean, it wasn't like trauma where it would be PTSD, but like when the next time I drove near that place, which it's not a place I go often, I didn't realize, I didn't recognize that I was even close, but I was just like, I was like, why am I getting like anxious right now? And then I drove by and I was like, oh, weird. Okay. Like I didn't think that I was having any kind of aversion or effect from that, but then here it is,
Yeah.
I mean, I've gone to the dentist since, so it's not like it, in order to be diagnosable, it has to be, severely impacting your daily functioning. That is kind of like the underlying criteria for almost anything,
Right.
like that's why Kaiser doesn't want to assess me for autism, because like my day-to-day, like I can live apparently fine without it. So don't waste their time.
Right. I was going to say, and also I have not known a whole bunch of our troops, a whole bunch of soldiers. But the few that I have actually kind of seemed the least likely to be like, oh, you want to talk trauma? They seem more like it always seems to me that it's people who haven't been in those situations that are like, oh, well, my grandpa was at D-Day, my blah, blah, blah. What about real soldiers go over and see people, blah, blah, blah. Soldiers aren't bringing that up. That's people at
true.
home.
Like for good reasons, probably, like, or not good, maybe like, okay, for example, like my grandpa was in World War II, never really talked about anything until the very, like when I was in high school, I think I had to do some kind of project and he let me interview him, and it was kind of like surfacey, but my mom was like, he's never talked about anything, so and it wasn't, I don't even remember, to be honest. That's how I found out about the one ship thing, and I can't verify that, but that's what he said, like why wouldn't I take my grandpa's word?
I mean, as long as you can verify what side he was on in World War II.
Definitely American citizen.
With a last name like Ursenbach, I wouldn't be going around telling people like, oh, my grandpa was in World War II. Also, my grandpa wasn't in World War II.
Oh, my grandpa was, and his last name is Rantz. We are German.
Ah.
Both sides of my mom's family came over like like when things were getting bad in Germany. They were like, we gotta get out of here. We can't do this whole like they got out of there. We were pre-Hitler Germans.
That's the time to be German.
Right.
My last name's German, but they're mostly just Swiss.
Okay.
And even then, I mean, they're Mormons from Utah. That's where my family was during World War II.
Technically, I'm fourth generation, which means nothing to me, but that's a thing to say about that. Okay, so PTSD, blah, blah, blah. If it's affecting your daily life, like most people are not having these active flashbacks. I actually, you don't know, so I'll tell you. I dated this person briefly. He was a medic firefighter, and the tipping point for me was I woke up in a chokehold. And I was like, whoa. He was asleep.
Right.
And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm saving you. And I was like, okay, this is issues. This person likes to drink and doesn't talk about stuff. Like, this isn't great.
Yeah.
So anyway, but like, so that person most likely had that. I don't know if they would say that it affected their daily functioning, but I would say that drinking heavily and going to work the next day, especially when you're driving, like that's not great.
Yeah. Well, too, if you have those kind of jobs where it is, the two things are where the like comorbidities, then I think it's probably a good idea to stay on top of stuff,
And this person would never do that.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know that. In that time frame, he would probably never say. I did tell him once that he was selfish. He was like, no one has ever said that. And
that he was what?
Selfish.
Oh, okay.
He was a nurse. I mean, that was my type, apparently. I loved him. Okay. Or I guess, I don't know. Again, very convincing with how they think my life should be run. And I was like, fine. I don't want to do that, which I did, but I didn't. It's a weird thing. Anyway, we talked about this one of the last few times, which is why I'm saying this. Okay, so PTSD, Okay, and then she goes on to say, what they have is bad therapy, emotional hypochondria. They focus so much on their own bad feelings that they magnify those feelings, make them an organizing principle in their lives, and then they have trouble escaping them. Maybe, but also like they're also just actually allowed to talk about it.
Right.
I think that would be true for a lot of people. Like even Bill Maher said something about, where is it? Like I was shy, like we're pathologizing shyness and depression. Like that was how, I have a theory about stand-up comedians. mood disorders. You know, like that's how I think about people who get into, you know, it's a lot of it is self-depreciating. These are not bad things. I'm just saying, like, probably everyone has a little bit of something.
But it's the same shit we always talk about. Everybody gets sad sometimes. That's not what we're talking about here. Oh, I was shy. And then, by the way, he mentions that he took marijuana to fix that.
Yeah.
That's
taking a drug to fix your problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So why the fuck is his marijuana more?
Because it was illegal and cool.
Yeah. But why is that more valid than my, Ritalin or my Zoloft?
Right.
Back when I took Zoloft.
Yeah. I mean, it's not different. It's just different sources.
Also, especially with
self-medicating is not great. Let me just say.
No. Yeah, I am on that boat entirely. Also, like, it seems especially shitty to talk about, sad and make light of depression when specifically men in huge numbers, in ways we have never seen before. I know in America, I don't know across the world, but at least in America, are offing themselves. The suicide rate.
His first guest of the day was hospitalized himself for suicidal ideation and attempt.
Yeah.
So
maybe that's something we
disease.
Fucking. Oh, I thought you said foot and mouth disease. Because isn't that an actual?
I don't know.
Yeah. Hand, foot, and mouth. Yeah, it happens to toddlers because those three things.
Kids on the spectrum. I've seen a lot of.
Oh yeah. I was like, I don't know where you're going with this one, Zanny. I got to be honest. Yeah, foot in mouth. Okay. Yeah. And
like, way to disrespect your first guest, because he was like seeming nice about it, like bringing that to light, and then he comes back and he says all this shit. Like, some people are a little bluesy. We have Eeyore for a reason. That's a personality type.
Yeah.
Kind of, and
I've known Eeyores that haven't been, to my knowledge, everybody, fighting battles you don't know about. But like, I've known Eeyores that aren't clinically depressed.
Right.
That some of the struggles I have had with depression, we've talked about, that have come up in friendly conversation. These are friends of mine. And they just didn't have, they couldn't relate to the way that I was, the feelings I was having, the inabilities I was having to get up and do things or to find joy in things or, and yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, some people are a little bluesy. Some people, are, like sad disorder. It's not in the DSM necessarily, but like, it's the sunlight deficiency thing where in the winter months where it's darker, rainier, potentially, the lack of vitamin D available from the sun affects people's moods. I think that's the thing, it's a cycle. Yeah. It could make you just a little glum,
for sure,
not clinically depressed. Or it could push you more over that line. I don't know.
Right.
But that's why people in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, struggle, according to common knowledge. I have no stats.
This is an old Daniel Tosh joke because he's like, California. He's like, I hate people from outside of California that always come around and they're like, oh, I like California, but I could never do it because I love seasons too much. I love seasons. And he's like, yeah, like that season where everything is gray and you slit your wrist just to see color.
That's funny, actually. And I mean, that could be true of like where we live. Like we have spring and fall and summer. But where I grew up north, like we had seasons. There was no snow. That's not a criteria for having a winter.
I mean, all places literally have seasons.
Right. I know. But it is a funny joke about California.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the seasons are nicer here.
I mean, by nicer, you mean it's warmer and sunny.
It is, yeah.
I don't love that. I actually think I would do well in the Pacific Northwest. I don't get sad.
Oh, Pacific Northwest, I could get that. Yeah.
Even Alaska.
Well, and also too, you're
actually, I don't know.
You grew up. Did you grow up Bay Area?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's kind of like our Pacific Northwest is. It's very west. It is Pacific, and it's pretty north as far as California goes.
It's slightly more west than where we are now, in relation to the coast.
Okay. Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah.
Who cares? Who cares?
Who gives a shit?
Okay.
Look at ADHDers ADHDing all over the fucking place.
So okay, then Bill Maher pulls out this statistic of college kids. So this is already the groups we've already talked about, not representative of the entire generation.
If I remember correctly, a source that he said himself, he's like, and this is a little bit of a right-leaning organization. I'm like, so you even pulled out a source from that you don't agree with the source because it agrees with what you said.
Right.
It's so crystal clear that you just, anyway.
Yeah. This stat says that 49% of adolescents have a mental health diagnosis. And then later he says, this is where this stat comes from. 78% of liberals and 52% of conservatives report feeling anxious, which we don't know anything about those studies.
Yeah.
So that's where they were talking about, like liberal people are the ones whose kids are like this, and liberal people are the ones who have more. And then Abagail goes, yeah, they're just so much they're highly educated. They're anxious about being so smart and educated or whatever. And then they're pushing that onto their kids, which I do think that, when parents actually have like undiagnosed clinically significant diagnoses, it is absorbed by the kids. Like everything you see as a child in your household, whatever that looks like, are the way you think the world is, Yeah. So it's natural for, anxiety to be a pattern amongst generations because you see it.
And not only that, a lot of this stuff is genetically passed down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some things have links and some things don't. But like either way, nature nurture combo, you see it, and people either follow suit or they go do a 180 without any of the healing work. So then they're like, oh, I'm not like that because I'm this, but it's like you're still kind of fucked up though.
it's always the thing of and I don't know if they mentioned this in there specifically, but the thing about hitting your kids and
they
people
didn't talk about hitting.
Yeah. But the like people always be like, well, I hit my kids and I turned out just fine. I'm like, do you? Because you hit kids.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You see a small human being who is growing and learning, and you introduce fear on an unprecedented in their lives example.
I'm not going to defend this, but I am going to say this.
I hit other people's kids.
I hit other people's kids on the regular. No. I understand the impulse to do it because this is not a person who is not escalated trying to hit kids. And if they are, they're fucking antisocial personality disorder. They're, they're not, other people just exist in the world for their pleasure. Like that's not what we're talking about. I have been frustrated to super high levels with just my cats. Okay. To the point where like, I've like swatted them with whatever, like get away from me, stop, you know. Right. And I don't like that, but it is true. I can see I'm glad I'm not a parent, not because I'm like I'm just gonna hit the kids all the time, but like the level of frustration I wake up with every day is between a 2 and a 5, depending on and then it just, and these cats are being cats incidentals. They are just doing shit I don't want them to do right now. So like I understand why parents might do that. I don't agree with it. I don't condone it, but I can see where the impulse, it's not like this kid is growing and I don't like that and I'm going to hit them. It's not that. I could say that.
Has the thought crossed my mind? Of course it has. And also I will throw in there, at this point, we have it on pretty good evidence that hitting doesn't.
Oh, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it is not a great tool in our toolbox. But yeah, situations are different. It's always wrong, but it's harder to make that. For some people, it's harder. Situationally, it's going to be harder to make that right.
Yeah. And I mean, it is legal to spank your children, which the only evidence that actually supports spanking is kind of an impossible scenario. It needs to be immediate. It needs to be done neutrally, and it needs to, basically a natural consequence of whatever happened, or at least maybe not a natural consequence, but at least, like whatever happened, I'm not mad, but I'm going to swat you, whatever it is, and it's over. Like,
right.
But find me a scenario where that is possible.
Yeah.
I can't think of it.
I'm with you on that one.
So, I mean, people are allowed to spank their children here. Beating the shit, like anger issue. Like if I were to actually have kids, I would need to get a punching bag or really like I have like it. I think it's a sensory thing too. But like when I get frustrated, it doesn't like I could be by myself in my office or something, and I just feel like I want to like you see this a lot. I mean, I saw it a lot when I had clients that couldn't articulate their emotion or whatever it is, or communicate effectively, or whatever it was, and like that's how you get a destroyed bedroom. That's how you get like people. This is a natural impulse, and I don't even think it's necessarily wrong. It's just what you do with it. How you channel that, because like it's something that I feel like I can't control, at least initially, until I become aware of what is happening and what am I going to do with it. When you say, oh, I am engaging this is great, I'm going to do that. That's a different thing. But I don't want to shame people that might have that impulse. Like I know that I felt shame about that for a long time. I wouldn't have said that stuff out loud even 2 years ago, probably. Because like, you're not supposed to do that, or like that's not normal. It's like, actually, I think that is.
No, and to your point, I am a firm believer of I'm not a mind police person.
Sure.
I have absolutely terrible thoughts in my head, on an almost constant basis. The things that go through my head are not the things of a good person. I try to be a good person, though, and I do believe that we can only judge people on their actions.
True. Yeah. Anyway, so they're just saying that everyone is over pathologized, everyone's overdiagnosed, and they're putting this on mental health professionals, which also is interchangeable with teacher, paraprofessional, whatever.
Right.
So I think the underlying message of this show is like therapy is bad. Stop sending your kids to therapy. And the liberals that watch this might do this. I feel differently. I read a critique saying, maybe it's, how fluently and all this stuff is floating around social media. So it's like for good reasons, like the community for ADHD is strong. The community for adults with autism is strong. Like all these things should be talked about, but it's like, that's one thing. If you have a diagnosis of something, that's different. It's all about how you take that information as a label. It's all about how or not. There's a lot that goes into it. It's probably not the therapy that's making the parent weird or whatever it is, doing the gentle thing. Yeah. I mean, bad therapists exist.
Oh, for sure.
But like most of it,
for sure,
it's not intentionally that way.
And I would, if I were to hazard a guess, I would say that much like many other giant problems that we face in society, there's not like one big thing. There's tons of stuff. One of the points that the Matt Welsh character brought up, he's a human being, but that was totally, these kids lived through COVID.
Yeah.
They were locked down for 2 years and surrounded by a disease that was killing tons of people. I didn't go through that when I was a kid. And all
the college kids now, if we're saying that everyone's on a 4-year track, this was during or post COVID. So these are kids or adolescents who lived through COVID in their high school years, had feelings about it or not or whatever, but probably did, and then went off to school. And this is where these stats are supposedly coming from. This is the group of people who are talking about their feelings and are saying they might have PTSD from that stuff. Like, there's a lot of extra anxiety. I know that a lot of people were depressed because they weren't able to interact with other people for so long. And like even me in high school, I would have probably not, I would have wanted to get out of the house.
Yeah. Yeah. And even then let's say even if you didn't want to get out of the house, you're losing 2 years of those out of the house experiences.
Oh, they just gave diplomas out.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you know what? Here you go. Like, didn't do the work. That's part of it.
I mean, yeah. But like, I know even like my kids are still struggling to make up what was lost during that time. And then that gets mixed in with other struggles that they have. My guess, like that, I'm guessing is probably playing into some of the higher things.
Oh, for sure.
Definitely, if that is in fact that like 50% of kids are, claiming whatever the
have a diagnosis.
But like also the fact that just because kids are getting diagnosed now didn't mean kids didn't used to have it. We just didn't give a shit about those kids.
That's why you could say autism is on the rise, but I don't think it is. I think they're better at diagnosing it now.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
And it's so hard to get it's so hard to get it. Okay. Like, get out of here. We're overdiagnosing autism. No. We're underdoing it.
Yeah, and it's going to be, I think, lots of factors like that. Certainly, I think, we have seen lots of advances and lots of great things happen. But also, like, fucking our generation does not own property the way that our parents' generation does. I'm not saying nobody in our generation owns it, but
I don't think I own property. I own a box in a bigger box, which I didn't think I'd be able to do.
Yeah, no, and good on you. But it's just, I certainly don't own property.
Most people don't.
Yeah, and that's not something my parents grew up with. And my kids are living up to that. We are dealing with the financial repercussions of all of the stuff that happened during COVID. I think I've mentioned on here, I've gotten priced out of my home and now I have to go find a new home. And that's not shit I had to deal with growing up. And so just this kind of like, there's so much better information out there. There's so much better, especially for kids on the margins. Nobody was talking anything about trans rights when we were kids, and now the situation isn't great, but it's getting better and people are talking about it. I didn't even know what a fucking non-binary person was until 10 years ago, maybe. No, I think a little longer than that.
But I met a trans person when I worked at Starbucks when I was 22, 23, and they told me that. I wouldn't have guessed. And at that time, I mean, I don't know. It definitely was not on the radar as it is now. Like, people who were trans back then had to like find the secret communities and just kind of like absorb into it and just kind of, and to the point of, I mean, this isn't even in here, but like in the book that she wrote about trans issues, girls and women are at immediate physical risk. And I'm like, listen, first of all, people who are trans no one is having to show their ID when they walk in the bathroom. So people have been using whatever bathroom they need to for this whole time.
100.
And this is not a factor.
There was a very recently, made me very sad, and you'll forgive me, I forget their name at the moment, but there was a young non-binary person, high schooler. They were AFAB, assigned female at birth. They were assigned female at birth.
Oh, I was like, ABFAB is not what you said.
They were non-binary, and some cis girls beat them to death in a public bathroom or in their school bathroom. The danger is not trans kids. The danger is to trans kids. And you know what? The same fucking thing goes for adults. There's no, yeah.
No, I agree. Like a trans person has zero interest in, I mean, as a blanket statement, zero interest in physically assaulting someone else in their bathroom. They're probably just really stoked to be there, to be able to use the bathroom that they feel aligns with their gender presentation and their gender, you know, that's about it.
And how fucking bad do we have to treat people that they have to be stoked that they can use the fucking bathroom?
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, and also, just getting back to this horrible, wretched woman. Have you seen the book, Irreversible Damage? Like the cover of it? The cover of it is a young girl, and it's a cartoon of a young girl with a hole cut out of her belly. The message being that these young women, because she's one of the ones that's specifically on a young women kick, are losing their fertility to these procedures, which by and large is not happening. But that we're losing young women in droves, and just the fucking, even from a feminist point of view, which she claims to be, that you would reduce a young girl to her fucking ovaries and her reproductive capabilities.
That's all women are good for, you know that.
Yeah, but like I just feel I fucking hate her.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely has a very strong point of view and is spreading a lot of misinformation, which is always the point.
Yeah,
you know, and not always it is the overall problem. You know, you can't control another person's opinions. Her opinion was formed for whatever reasons. I don't know her.
Right.
But like things being presented as facts that are not, I don't know, like people just trust what's out there. People will watch this episode and be like, oh, this was actually really good information. I'm really glad that I saw this, you know?
And,
and you know, I don't know. I don't change my mind easily or uneasily. Like if I'm interested in something or I'm considering changing my mind, I'll at least go back and do some more research. But I don't know that that's how most people do it. I don't know if that's how a lot of people do it anyway. And that's where the danger lies.
Yeah.
On that note. You have any final thoughts?
Yeah. What's her name again? Abagail. Shrier. She's a terrible person. And Bill Maher is a terrible person who also amplified her. Also, I will say, just to be fair, at the end, Bill Maher does do a bit about how unfair the corrections facility, the jail system in America is. And I thought he was pretty spot on about that. I thought his jokes fell flat. Still not very funny.
He thinks he had that little smirk where he's just like, oh, I can't wait to deliver this one.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, your jokes aren't landing. There was one thing, it was during the Google, they did some like,
oh yeah,
pretend we found these Google searches from these famous people, which I didn't even know who most of them were. But like, if I was sitting up there and having to pretend to laugh, like that whole, I was like, this isn't funny to me. Cause I don't think it's a secret anymore. If you've been listening this whole time, you must know by now. I don't know a lot about what's going on in the world. So like all of the people that were, I mean, other than Elon Musk, I know who that is, but, I didn't find any of those things funny. Yeah. And to sit there and have to fake laughing because you're on TV,
they weren't funny.
No, I think
you could have known everything about all of those things.
even Abigail's face was just like frozen in I'm a laughing face, but I don't think there was laughter.
Yeah. Same for Matt Welsh.
Yeah, I feel like there's a bit of I feel like Bill Maher's probably a bully. I can't verify it, but it just seems like that an emotional.
I think that when you put cameras in front of people and someone tells a joke, you're more likely to laugh at it. I think that's just the situation.
I don't know. I also think that I mean I don't know. There's no way that person doesn't control that, which that's his show.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what editors do.
I guess. Well, I don't know. I don't know anything about anything anymore. If you enjoyed any of this or have any thoughts to share, potentially, but if you appreciated the discussion, and you want to let us know, could you rate, subscribe wherever you're listening? How about leave a review? That would be nice. Yeah. It would be great to get a 5-star. If you want to follow us on Instagram or TikTok, you can do so at Moxie Pod. If you want to email us and tell us a little bit longer version of your thoughts and feelings about this episode or anything else. Yeah. My innermoxiepod@gmail.com. Find us on...
I was going to say, you can politely inform us where we just fucked up and messed up on this.
True.
Maybe we had a bad take in here somewhere.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, when you talk about privilege and gender stuff, I mean, I can't get it right all the time. I try. Find us on Patreon also and support us, because we are open to learning and, not saying things and, being educated about what's up and what's okay.
Yeah.
And what's not okay. And if you want to follow me, you can do so on Instagram at Xanism. I am a religion and a disease, and I have not been on Instagram in 3 weeks, but I probably will get on there soon. I usually don't take that long of a sabbatical.
All right. I have been on TikTok, though I haven't posted anything. You can find me on TikTok at Band Ronnie, which is, of course, a reference to my other podcast, the Band Media Podcast, which you should give a listen to.
And until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags. Bye.
Later.